Hey everybody, Dr. Alexa Altman is back per your request, and today we're going to talk about healthy shame versus toxic shame. So for those of you who don't know who Dr. Alexa Altman is, do you want to tell them a little bit about what you do?
Yes, so I'm a clinical psychologist and I specialize in the alchemy of resilience and authenticity, which is another way to say I specialize in trauma.
And she is wonderful at what she does. I will link all of her website and her Instagram below so you can check that out. But like I said, today we're going to talk about healthy shame versus toxic shame. And you said first, people confuse shame and guilt?
Right, because we don't really distinguish often when we're talking about, oh, I feel guilty, I feel ashamed of something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you'd think they'd be the same thing, I guess.
And they can kind of feel the same, but there's a clear difference. So shame essentially is, I feel bad, I feel wholeheartedly disconnected from like the human race. I feel a sense of aloneness and badness, and guilt is I did something bad. It's really more of a focus on behavior.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so shame is like internal,
Yes.
pretty much, and then guilt would be like an external.
Like my friend hurt my feelings, or I did something wrong, and I feel like guilt is I want to act in a way that's aligned with my values. So I might go and apologize and say, I really screwed up. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Guilt, right?
No, that makes sense. And I think I do use them the same. Like I thought they were the same. When we talked about this earlier, I was like, what is the difference? But I wanted to wait to learn along with you. Okay, so now that we know the difference between shame and guilt, let's start with the toxic shame. Let's just go into the
toxic stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most people, when they talk about shame, toxic shame is essentially created from ongoing experience of rejection, humiliation, neglect, abuse. Often we think of abuse or trauma.
I was going to say childhood trauma. Like
Childhood trauma.
Those people with complex PTSD would definitely come out of situations that could be very shame-filled.
Exactly. It's almost like we can use trauma and shame interchangeably. It always exists when there's trauma.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, right? Because if it's internal, if the external messages we're receiving from others that we're not important, or that how we feel isn't a real thing, no one pays attention, or our thoughts and beliefs and what we think is okay for us, they're not respected.
Yeah.
Then we'd internalize that as like, I'm bad, this is bad, I've done something wrong, everything about me is wrong.
Right. And I think the thing about toxic shame is there's never repair. So like, let's say you have a big event where maybe your parent was really frustrated with you and yelled at you and, go to your room right now. And then toxic shame experience, there's never a conversation after that, right?
Yeah.
So the person just leaves the experience feeling like, I'm bad, I have that pit in my stomach, and we'll talk about the physiology of shame too. And I just kind of walk around, I go back into my life and nobody ever talks about it. It never gets addressed, and then there's never a new narrative that's created.
Okay.
Right?
And that's what makes it toxic,
That's what makes it toxic. Yeah. And so I think the other thing we could say that is often seen in toxic shame is there's an identity formed around that feeling. So it's like we could say shame-based personality, where I feel like I'm this unworthy, unlovable self.
Yeah. And I could see how that could affect so many other things in our life, because if we all act out of what we believe, like our own confidence. You guys know I always talk about like positive self-talk and importance of how we feel about ourselves and how we act out of that and make decisions based on that.
Right.
I could see how this could like perpetuate toxic behavior, toxic
relationships.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're seeking out oftentimes, not consciously, people who reflect our shame.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Not really people who are going to help us repair it.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. We're almost looking for people to affirm what we already know.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately we've talked about this before, how our brain will do the same thing expecting a different result because it's trying to like work through it.
Right. Freud calls that repetition compulsion. We repeat to complete, but we're kind of we're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah. And we already know where that road leads us. But we're hoping for something different.
Right.
So how does this then how do we differentiate toxic shame from healthy shame? Yeah.
So I always think of this story about healthy shame when I think of my first child, who, when he was a runner as a toddler, he like ran all around, and one time I won't say one time, happened a lot, he'd run towards a street, and I go, Ryder, right, stop.
Yeah.
And, being yelled at, his body froze, appropriately so. And he had his head down and kind of went into, that traditional shame posture.
Yeah.
I call it the shame hole.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
averted gaze.
Yeah.
You know, the hunched shoulders.
The opposite of like empowered, confident.
Yeah, but it stopped him in his tracks.
Yeah.
And so when I think about healthy shame, it is one way that we navigate our social world, is that without shame, it creates boundaries. As parents, we have to say no. We have to set a boundary.
It's like, in a way, the healthy shame is like, you acting this way isn't okay.
Right.
Because that's hurtful.
Right.
Or that's dangerous.
Right.
But then you acting this way is okay.
Right.
And in a way, it's like we need a healthy level, just like everything. It's not all or nothing. We're not black and white thinking here. It's like there's a healthy percentage of all things in our life.
And I think it's also this communication that as human beings, we're limited.
Yeah.
We're not that powerful. I mean, we can be powerful, but there's a limit to the power.
Yeah, and a limit to what's acceptable societally,
Right.
that we can actually do and follow through on. Like, we have limits to us as a whole.
Yes.
Just healthy-wise, right?
Right. So the story of my child and the street, I think an example, not that this happens every time, but in the street example is stopping him when he stops and walking up to him and saying, here, I want to tell you what just happened, and creating a narrative. I yelled, not because I was mad at you, but because you could have gotten hit by the car.
Yeah.
And so my voice got really loud, and then it stopped your body, and that must have felt really bad. How did it feel to you to have me yell at you? And then there's what we call a shame repair. And then he has a different story created internally over why I feel the way that I do. I'm not bad. Actually, something just happened that led to that feeling. Right?
Interesting. And I do know, I did some research for my night terror video that I put out a long time ago, where we learned that children learn through storytelling, and that's how they process through their days. Like, if you ever remember, if anybody ever been around a toddler or a child when they're first learning to speak, they tell these long stories that maybe don't even make sense, but they're like, and then I went to the thing, and then the dog was so cute, and it's like this jumbled, but it's like their way of processing through their day. And so it's really interesting that if you tell them a new narrative, it helps explain and help them almost accept what they felt and what they went through, and then move forward.
Exactly. And when we talk about shame resilience, building a narrative is key to help make sense and process. So kids need narrative, but adults need it too.
Yeah, we do too.
We need it too. Evolutionary psychologists think about it as we're tribal in nature. We have a need to belong and fit in and be connected. And that shame was thought of as an emotion that was healthy, that allowed us to stay within the social norms and social group. But if you acted outside of that boundary, shame represented like you've done something wrong, come back in.
Gotcha.
It's like a learning tool.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. Just to kind of wrap this up, so that, because we understand now the difference between shame and guilt, toxic and healthy shame. If someone is struggling with toxic shame, I know we're going to talk about it in our next video. Make sure you're subscribed and you have your notifications turned on. But what's something that they can do today to kind of start maybe untangling that toxic shame, or just helping them better understand it?
Yeah, I think it's a journey to understand shame and detangle and deconstruct it. But just to begin journaling around the story of unworthiness and what that could look like. I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, can look like all the ways that it presents itself in your life.
Yeah, so maybe like a journal prompt would be, when are times that I feel unlovable? When do I remember that starting? Or are there times when I felt like I'm not worthy of someone's attention, love? It could be the promotion, it could be anything, and then maybe just writing about that, why it started.
Why it started, when it started, maybe who it was initiated with. Oftentimes it's early relationships that we talked about. And the difference between somebody who has healthy shame and toxic shame is really belief. One person believes that they're worthy, and toxic shame, the other person believes they're not.
Interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I hope you found that helpful. I think it's really interesting for us to kind of define the differences between things, because we use them interchangeably without realizing it. So thank you so very much. And we're doing another video about shame resilience. So make sure you're subscribed and check it out, because we'll take this conversation even further. Thanks again, Alexa.
So good to be here.
And we will see you next time.